Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP and author, and joining him, Lettice Bromovsky, journalist from the Mail Online. Good morning to the two of you. Really good to see you. Not a lot of love for Rachel Reeves here at the moment, and obviously you were you are a former Labour member of Parliament. Here we are in the position where Labour kept promising stuff before the election. You know, we're not going to raise tax and national insurance and VAT. But they lied because, of course, they have increased employers' national insurance. It has hit people in the pocket. And now this big story saying Rachel Reeves' national insurance tax rate will destroy 100,000 jobs as hard-pressed companies are forced to lay off staff and freeze hiring. This is Deutsche Bank, huge employer here in the city, showing signs of cracking, warned that the changes to NI will put a strain on employers. We've got all of these companies also saying they are all struggling because of this, and ultimately, actually, people are going to spend, as Justin was saying, they're going to spend less, they'll go out less. We're going to see all of those pubs raising the price of their beer, like Tim Martin saying from Wetherspoons. We're also going to see restaurant bills going up. It's not great.
No, it's a recipe for disaster, and I should put my cards on the table. This is a left-leaning Labour government. I was always a traditional right-wing Labour MP. So this government isn't what I would be doing, and it is a recipe for disaster. We've got inflation now increasing when it was only just starting to come down. Growth is stagnating at 0.1%. It's one of the poorest growth rates in the G7 countries. And as you point out, national insurance on jobs is creating job losses. I made a quick list of announcements. This week, Asda is shedding 500 jobs, Direct Line 550, Post Office 1,000 jobs, Home Base 2,000 jobs to go. So it is proving a disaster, not just for the government, but for the people of the country.
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I'm glad you made that distinction about the difference of where you sat within the Labour government, because I do feel it's duplicitous. They got in promising a number of things. They have reneged on those promises. They said, well, we never really promised that in the first place. But also, I think businesses were duped into this. We had all these businesses signing up saying, yes, I'm pro-Labour. Was it being pro-Labour or was it being anti-Tory?
Well, that's definitely an interesting question. I do think even now a lot of people, whether they're businesses or voters, look back on that and they were looking to get the Tories out rather than vote Labour in. It wasn't ever considered a Labour win, it was considered a Tory loss, essentially, that election. But I do think what you were saying earlier, they've been storing up these problems because they overcompensated back in the election over fear that they wouldn't get in for some reason. So overcompensated in promises, which made it very difficult at the time for Conservatives to sort of pin them down on anything, because they said, you know, we're not going to cut any of these top three big taxes, income tax, national insurance, VAT. So it was very difficult to get them on anything. But when it actually came round to it in the budget 3 weeks ago, it clearly was all about semantics, very small details. It won't be employees, it'll be employers.
But it's also about priorities. We're seeing a load of public money being given to train drivers in pay increases, junior doctors getting loads of money.
But it's tone deaf, isn't it? Because actually, if you're running an SME, a small business, employing people, what is the point of setting up those businesses? And if you're in the public sector, you get tons of cash.
Oh, absolutely. This is a pro-public sector budget Mansion House speech and an anti-private sector budget Mansion House speech. There's no doubt about that.
So this is true traditional Labour territory as far as I can see.
Because even under Blair, you know, the new Labour, they were quite pretty pro-business. This isn't a pro-business government. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's on the front of the newspaper today, where businesses are saying, where's the growth? When are we going to get growth? We were told we were going to get announcements in the Mansion House speech, which was on Thursday night, and yet business quite rightly is saying, where's the growth coming from?
And this is of the government's making, isn't it? Because the government has talked down the economy. Rachel Reeves has said it's going to be terrible. Keir Starmer never seems to say anything at all. And as Simon was saying, the UK economy barely grew between July and September. Of course, there was this huge uncertainty. I mean, it's embarrassing, but it's their own fault.
Yeah, 100% is their own fault. They backed themselves into this own corner by not telling people. Also, I'm going to say a lot to blame is the speculation we had for months. It took them months to bring out this budget. And in that time, I thought all the speculation that was going on was incredibly damaging to business confidence, to public confidence, to people not knowing what was going to happen, or what I know we'll come on to farmers shortly, but like that sort of public fear going around it took too long to come out.
And you touched upon it. One of the big stories that I think is really brewing here, and it's quite personal to Rachel Reeves, is this issue. Guido Fawkes have been doing loads on this. I think it's a bigger story as the days go on. Absolutely. This point that she's forged, for the want of a better way, CV.
Well, let me just tell people about this, in case they don't know. You're absolutely right. This was Guido Fawkes that essentially has caught her, and there's been a lot of speculation about whether Rachel Reeves really is an economist. And so on her LinkedIn profile, it said economist at the Bank of Scotland full-time from December 2006 to December 2009. It's been changed to retail banking at Halifax 2006 to 2009. And this is either a frank lie or has she been caught?
It looks completely dodgy. I think it's very dubious. And she had quite a good reputation as this Iron Chancellor. She sort of took on the monocle of Gordon Brown, very serious, very straight-faced. But it looks like she's losing credibility by the day. And then with the economic wars that the country is facing, people will begin to question. I think credibility is reducing rapidly.
Does she know what she's doing?
I think that she's got a lot to prove. I'm not sure particularly on what her CV or resume says in the past, but I think she's got a lot to prove, and right now they haven't delivered on any of their promises.
We have to pause for a moment. I want to ask you, Simon, when we come back, where did it all go wrong for Labour, what the future holds, and whether the Labour government can stay in place for the next 5 years. All of that still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're in the middle of Head to Head with Simon Danchuk, who is a former Labour Member of Parliament, an author, and Lettice Bromovsky, a journalist at the Mail Online. Simon, let me come to you. So you said right at the beginning, this is true left Labour. This isn't the Labour that you represented. Did they get into power under false pretenses? Because what they told people was the economy is safe in our hands, the economy is our number one issue here. They have now said that actually it's obviously not ideal, I think was Rachel Reeves' kind of comment on the appalling growth of 0.1%. Where did it go wrong?
This is a North London left-leaning government. You know, you've got, and in the cabinet you've got Lammy, you've got Starmer. You know, most of the cabinet are from North London. Quite literally, Ed Miliband lives in North London. They're all from around North London, and it's what you would call traditionally soft left Labour, and that's not what I joined. I was traditional Labour, which is very different. Tough on crime, tough on illegal immigration, get people back into work. That's what Labour stood for, work. But that's not what Labour stands for now. And it really went wrong. I mean, first of all, back, if you can go back long enough, when we chose Ed Miliband to be leader of the party, and he disastrously lost in 2015, and then it set it up where Corbyn took over as leader, and then we went to Starmer. But it's too left-wing. The party is far too left-wing. That's the reality of it. And so when it's got power, which it has now, it's pushing a left-wing agenda.
And Lettice, just in terms of that, I mean, Keir Starmer is deeply unpopular. The Labour government is deeply unpopular. So early, actually, 134 days. Tony Blair did have this honeymoon period for a long time. And the difference was he came to power and there was a sense of optimism, I think, whether you voted for him or not. There really was a sense of optimism. How long can this government last? Because the problem is they have such a massive majority.
They do. They have a massive majority, but the massive majority is not... You know, the majorities that a lot of these MPs hold is very, very small. You know, in some places it might just be about 39 votes, I believe, one Labour MP has won by. Yeah. So they might have a massive majority. I don't think anyone in the country is looking to have a general election anytime soon. What the country needs right now, I do think, is stability.
Totally.
I do think, though, that these first 100 days... There's been a lot of teething issues, and I think Labour itself has been shocked.
Teething issues? It's badly thought through.
Okay, fine.
I think it's badly thought through policy. They have no idea how the rest of the country thinks. So, you know, look, I come from a farming constituency. I come from rural Suffolk, and we're about to see the farmers going on protest. I've never seen anything like this. My friends who are farmers are livid at the changes in inheritance tax, and of course you've got 80-year-old farmers who are terrified. We saw the suicide of one farmer over this. There may well be a national strike where they say, right, we're not going to give you any food and the supermarkets will be empty. Is that the inflection point for Labour?
I think that's something that Labour has massively underestimated, the impact that that's going to have on people and the reaction that it's got from people in society. Like you say, even a YouGov poll this week has said that people would support them withholding food from this country going out in terms of that.
Yeah, I will be on I haven't been on a march or a demonstration for donkey's years, but I'll be out on Tuesday supporting the farmers in central London. If we can't support the farmers, who can we support? But on a serious note, I think we're going to see more civil unrest as this Labour government goes on. I think people are exceptionally angry. When you get out to the...
Starmer will lock them up, won't he?
Well, but you can only lock so many up. And I think it's going to be a real issue. And so, if anything will bring this government down, it will be civil unrest, and I think it's going to increase. And I've spoke to MPs about this as well, who believe that to be the case.
Well, I was talking about this story last week about Labour MPs unable to do their constituency surgeries because they are so frightened of the vitriol that is coming their way.
Oh, absolutely. And talking about the Labour majority, it is very big. But I say this: I've been studying politics 30 odd years. If you're a Labour MP and your majority is 5,000 or less, I'd spend the next 5 years constructing a different career. And if my majority was 10,000 or less, I'd be in the constituency as much as absolutely possible.
And on that as well, with the farmers, there's been reported in the Times today that there are 7 MPs who are looking, might be losing their jobs, one of them being John Whitby, who is in, I can't remember.
Derbyshire Dales.
Derbyshire Dales, that's it. He's got a majority of about 350, but within his community, there's around 3,000 people in the farming community. Means he would lose his seat in the next election based off of this trajectory.
But Simon, this also goes back to your point about this North London, Islington-centric government, where Ed Miliband, who is a fool, is standing up saying we're going to pave over our arable farmland with solar panels, which the farmers don't want, no one wants, isn't going to work. And in terms of, have you noticed it's a cloudy country?
Yeah, and it looks like they've got a very negative agenda in terms of rural England and farming. I mean, you've got John McTiernan, a former Labour advisor, saying the other day that the Conservatives should treat farmers, the Labour should treat farmers like the Conservatives treated the miners, meaning, rule them out.
That's jaw-dropping.
Absolutely unbelievable. And as you point out, solar solar panels all over fields. It's as and the implication is we can rely on other countries for our food. I think it's an absolute disaster.
Well, another point of that is who is this going to impact the most when inheritance tax come in? Small and medium farmers who it will impact. They're the ones who are going to have to sell up. Who's going to be buying that land? It's not going to be other farmers. It'll go to hedge funds who then use it for carbon offsetting, so it's not producing food.
And do you think there is a sense that actually the Labour government has no idea what a farm is or where food comes from? We talk about school children not knowing what a chicken is, that it comes wrapped up in cellophane, but I don't think this North London lot have ever been anywhere where there is a farm or understands actually. I was saying that I'm watching them harvest all the beet at the moment. They're doing it in the pitch black with lights on. It's hard work, but without the farmers and the hard work they do, and many of them make a loss over several years and then they get the money back later on. Why would you be a farmer?
Well, exactly. Right now, why would you be a farmer? There are people who are losing their entire livelihoods. You mentioned the man who committed suicide, who had had his farm for 70 years and then feared he couldn't pass it on. There is definitely this underestimation of what this means to people and what it means to societies and communities within these rural areas.
And it's the broader point. I think it's on the front of the Telegraph today. Obesity is costing us something like 280 billion a year in the NHS. And this is all about what we eat.
Which is bigger than the NHS budget.
Yeah, it's all about what we eat. You know, that's the reality of it. And if we got back to basics in terms of food supply and everything else, we'd be in a much better state.
So just talking about what the farmers are going to do, and I'm really rather cross with the NFU because they're trying to tone it down, but we're going to see that 10,000 farmers heading to London for a march on Tuesday. We're also going to see, I think, some tractors going in and things like that, and that's a good thing. But there's also on the front page, I think it's the Times this morning, saying thousands of marchers in London next week are being urged to leave no mark, will donate to food banks. Feelings are running very high, which speaks to your point. But the farming protest could turn French. And this is the really important point, because actually if the farmers dig their heels in, which I think they might do, and then block the roads in London with combine harvesters, with tractors, with all the rest of it, and make them sit up and listen to the farmers, I think that's your inflection point about people and the civil unrest.
Yeah, absolutely right. And there's this other campaign which is reported in the Daily Mail today called Enough is Enough. A set of farmers that are going to go on organising a strike. So they're going to stop the supply of meat and other goods to the supermarkets. And I think that sort of thing, combined with people on the streets, is going to have a massive impact, not just on our lives, but on the government as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, imagine going to your supermarket and suddenly there's no beef there or there's no chicken there. That will mean that it will impact literally every single person in society. And that's when people will turn around and be like, what the hell's going on here? Sort this out.
80% of the British beef market comes from this country, 90% of fresh poultry, also 66% of lamb and 50% of pork. And I say the farmers, all power to their elbow. We'll continue this conversation after the break.
will be aid agencies and aid people who will tell you around the world you've got to work with whoever's in the country, whoever's running the country. Hamas, of course, were running the Gaza Strip. But the point is, with all of what you're saying is true, but also there's other elements to this as well. They use children as human shields. They go into schools. They teach children to hate Jewish people. We've seen loads of evidence of that as well. This is UN money. This is taxpayers' money here in the UK promoting this as well. It's really worrying. I just think it's totally disgraceful and absolutely disgusting.
Talk. We're in the middle of Head to Head with Simon Danchuk, former Labour Member of Parliament, author, and Lettice Bromovsky, journalist at the Mail Online. There's this really big story, Lettice, about this Trump aide telling the United Kingdom to choose between the United States or Europe. Now, as far as I was aware, I thought we'd Brexited, which we haven't Brexited very well. And the point about European trade is it is declining. We've got an increase in trade from around the world. You've got Donald Trump coming in. Donald Trump loves the United Kingdom. There is an amazing opportunity here. Stephen Moore, who is supporting Trump as he prepares for government, has basically said, given Trump is going to bring in all these tariffs for goods being imported into the United States as much as 20% from this country, or indeed if you're China 40 to 60%, then this is an ideal opportunity for the UK to set out its stall and decide which of those two entities is the most important.
Yes, no, exactly. And it could be a big opportunity. It's not that surprising. So first of all, this has come from a Trump aide in the transition team. This isn't a member of his government. And it's not that surprising that this might be the view that Trump and his team might be taking at this point. You know, we know Trump is very distrustful of multilateral organizations like the EU, NATO, COP, all of those sort of things. So I don't think we should be too worried about this right now. I would say that when this deal was first coming around under Boris Johnson in 2020, we got close to it, but we stepped back from it because of things around their agricultural produce.
So like chlorinated
chicken, super pumped up beef full of hormones, things like that. And that's the reason that it fell through. I think in terms of the tariffs, if we could, or if Keir Starmer can get a window where we wouldn't have to pay those, that should be seriously considered.
Well, what's going on in government here? Because you've got David Lammy, who is the most unfit person to be Foreign Secretary, as far as I can see, calling Trump a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath for a start. If there is a trade deal to be done with the United States, surely we should grasp it with both hands.
Oh, absolutely. But my concern relates exactly to that. If tariffs are put on British goods going into the US, then you can only blame the Labour government, because one after another over the last 3 years they've been playing student politics, attacking Trump, calling him various names of all different descriptions.
Also, Trump's very petty, you know. He will hold on to those things. He's saying, you know, it's fine, we can move on.
Absolutely, and just rolling out King Charles won't be enough to satisfy him, I can assure you. So if we get a bad trade deal with the US, the problem lies with one group of people only, and it's those Labour ministers who've been attacking and slagging off Trump over the last 3 years. Because if they'd been playing mature politics, we could have got a better deal. That'll be the argument, and it'll be a justifiable one.
It certainly will. How do you think the Labour government will deal with that? Because obviously this goes against every kind of sinew of their body, because they hate Trump so much, viscerally hate him.
Absolutely.
But he is going to be one of the most powerful people in the world.
Well, the smart thing to do would be for Starmer to get rid of Lammy.
I would agree.
By Christmas or soon after. And he's another one of the North London Labour MPs, by the way, isn't he, Tottenham? But that would be the smart thing to do, get rid of Lammy. He's, as you've pointed out earlier, he doesn't perform very well, and he's the one who's been most verbally attacking.
Can I just ask you genuinely or generally about the Labour government? It seems to me that there are various policies really ill thought through. There's another policy here So they're trying everyone, and certainly Ed Miliband believes that net zero is the right thing to do, even though by 2035, even though we only actually contribute 1% of global emissions. So they're forcing everyone into electric cars, but at the same time, drivers of new electric cars are going to pay more money because they're going to go above a threshold that means they're in a luxury vehicle tax, so up to £2,125 extra. But of course they're more money because electric vehicles are more money. So again, this is the left and the right hand of government not actually making any sense.
Well, exactly. It seems there's sort of confusion there. It's incredibly counterproductive to have this sort of additional tax on electric cars when your whole messaging is all around let's go greener, let's go more net zero, let's buy electric cars. You know, they want to be get rid of all internal combustion engines by 2030. Well, if you want people to take a step in that direction, why then are you trying to tax them on top of when they're doing what you want and going green and buying an electric car?
And I don't think the infrastructure is in place.
It's not.
To support the number of electric cars that they're hoping to achieve.
Well, the grid isn't.
No, exactly.
There, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And this goes back to the rural communities. There's a huge problem in East Anglia where they're going to stick pylons across all our rural countryside, which actually is playing extremely badly in East Anglia.
Yeah, absolutely. And the investment, the cost of that is just phenomenal. And the idea that you can do this, because we're fast approaching 2030, 2035. They've got all these targets. It's not doable. That's the reality of it.
So what happens then? If it's not doable, what does the government do? Go, oh, well, we never meant it.
Yeah, no, well, and it's going to be that on a whole range of targets. I mean, the idea of building 1 million houses, they're not going to come anywhere near the.
Well, 300,000 we can't even do that.
I was going to say, you know, we struggle with those targets, let alone 3 times that.
So Simon made that point earlier that this is student politics. Is actually the problem with this government is that they are inexperienced, they're incompetent, and they are playing student politics when actually they need to grow up and realise that this isn't tribal anymore. You are running a country.
I think there's definitely a part of it where there's inexperience is playing a huge part in this in a way, because it's been so long that they were in power that's what caused them to store up all these problems, which are now here. We are now at the later of those problems, and now they are all presenting themselves and rearing their ugly head.
Just very quickly before we finish, there is this big story in The Sun this morning. An angry passenger has branded a new mum selfish because she took a baby on board a 6-hour flight to Manchester. The bit that's missing from that is that essentially this woman took a 6-month-old baby in business class on the plane. Should you ever take a baby in business class?
I mean, take your baby in business. If you've got the money, anyone should go in business class. I will say
and a baby, even though I'm paying to be in business class.
We're all paying to be.
I've paid to be in business, and I've got a screaming child.
I will say no one ever wants to sit next to a baby, whether you are in economy or business or first class.
I love babies, actually.
I love babies.
Yeah, no,
I don't want one next to me.
No, I know you don't. Well, I'm going to upset you because I think they should be allowed to go in there.
Why?
Well, I just think you have to accept that these things happen. Do you know what I mean?
What babies happen?
It's a nightmare, disaster.
So you're both agreed that babies should be able to.
Well, I think you can't go around banning babies from business class, but I do think no one ever wants to sit next to the baby, the young child, the toddler.
One of those things you have to put up with.
Yeah.
Well, even though you're spending £3,000 for
it would be sad.
Wouldn't you be unhappy if you spent £3,000 and you got a baby next to you?
Furious.
Yeah, no, you'd be fed up about it. There's no doubt about it. But I think
you're still going to allow it.
He's got a lump here on that one.
Well, let me know your thoughts on that. Thank you very much to both of you for coming in. Simon Danchuk, former Labour Member of Parliament and author, and Lettice Bromovsky, journalist at the Mail Online. That was today.